Did you know that you should always put a layer of gravel or rocks on the bottom of a pot in order to improve drainage? I hope you didn't know that, because it's false. And today I want to share another 10 landscaping myths that people like you and even me still believe, so you'll never do them again. Starting with this sticky myth. So you see wilting leaves in the middle of a hot day, and you assume that means you should immediately water. Well, let me give you an exact example, and this is true of many plants, but a real common one is tomato plants. If you see them wilting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it doesn't mean they need water. It means they're hot and they're responding to excess heat, and that's how many plants respond. But the problem is, if you choose to water it, then you're going to cause other problems for the plant, because the combination of heat and too much water is more dangerous than heat and not quite enough water. So if you see them very hot in the afternoon wilting, then say, I'm going to check this plant again in the morning. If it also looks wilted in the morning, that is one way you know it does need water. But if it looks refurbished, then it was just a response to heat. When you water a plant correctly, it will thrive, just like any tree that has access to enough resources in the ground. But when it comes to trees, there is another myth that many people still believe. Let's see if you do. And the myth, which has a lot of ramifications, is that topping a tree controls its height. If you just top a tree, say once a year, you'll see it sprout back with many, many weak sprouts under the cut. It can ruin a lot of trees, but they'll eventually go back to about the same height. There's a few ways to best control height and control size of trees. Focus more on thinning cuts and not cutting branches in half. We're going to do this thinning and most of the pruning just after the tree puts on most of its new growth every year. If a tree is going to put on new growth, it's for the purpose of fueling more growth through photosynthesis, and that's how trees grow. But if we trick the tree, and as soon as it puts on new growth, we do extensive pruning, then we take away its capacity through photosynthesis to grow more. The other way is a rather inelegant term called drop crotching. Drop crotching is a tree pruning technique used to reduce the length or height of a branch while keeping the tree looking natural. Instead of cutting a branch off in the middle, you cut it back to a smaller side branch that can take over as the new leader. So what if a plant or tree is native to your area? If it's a native plant, I can leave it alone. It doesn't require care. Well, that is very wrong, and let me explain why that is. A lot of native plants are a little bit sensitive to establish, so in the beginning, it probably needs just as much care as an exotic plant. The goal of picking native plants is to pick plants that, after establishment, will require a lot less maintenance and a lot less water. But it's also a more complex issue than you might imagine, because first of all, it's difficult in many parts of the country to pick native plants that are native to the exact area that you are planting. A great example is our state tree, the coast redwood. It only grows in foggy parts of the coast because it likes summer fog. And then other California natives are interesting because they're easy to kill with kindness. You know, they're very easy to overwater. So you need to select carefully and understand why the natives grow in that area. If you like a life and a garden that is low maintenance, consider subscribing to our channel. You'll see our videos every week without having to lift a finger, and the big part is they're free. Loads of people think when they're adding a new plant to their garden, the hole that the new plant goes into should be filled with some magic, lush soil amendments. I'm here to tell you you shouldn't, and here's why. So if you use some kind of wood-based mulch or potting soil and fill the entire hole that you've dug for your plant, you get a bathtub effect, and the tub is comprised of the native soil, and the water just stays in that hole and the roots stay in that hole. And that's the opposite of what we want. We want water draining through out into the native soil, and we want roots rooting beyond the original hole. Most soil scientists recommend trying to use the native soil as much as possible as backfill. We amend that recommendation by saying you should put inoculants into the backfill, like our products, to try to get a lot of soil activity to go on to try to build beneficial life, and that would be able to spread out into the native soil area. Most people realize fertilizer is great for plants and causes green, healthy growth. Since that's the case, should you use more fertilizer? The answer is no, particularly with synthetic fertilizers, because it will quite literally burn your plants. But there is a better alternative. Synthetic fertilizer, particularly in the summer when it's hot, is very volatile. It can cause a lot of problems. You need to be very careful with it. And the way it's watered into the soil is important. And if you don't water it right away, it can cause burning. So a great alternative is organic products that don't burn. And organic products that don't burn can be used in the middle of the summer and are most effective when the soil is warm enough that the microbes are active and the plants are growing. For instance, with our products, we can't burn anything, even if you don't water it. So that's a big difference between a synthetic approach and an organic approach. Over-fertilizing plants in the summer and even the spring is a problem I see frequently, and causing burn or even causing growth that isn't desirable. When you're growing vegetables and bearing plants, you can over-fertilize and produce all this lush vegetative growth, but not the result you want in terms of production. We need to discuss a myth that has been around for too long, and doing the opposite is actually the best. That's unusual, isn't it? All trees need to be staked. Now, the reason doing the opposite is actually better is it's better for trees if they don't need to be staked. But there's a big exception there, and that is if they don't need to be staked but can still grow straight or grow the way you want them to grow, then it's much better not to stake them. Trees develop strength in their trunks unstaked much faster and much more effectively. But the reason we stake them is if you don't and they get crooked, then they are more subject to blowing over completely once they get heavy on top. We don't really want to stake trees, but we have to stake them, many of them, when we get them from the nursery because they're not strong. You look at their caliper and it's the same all the way up, and that's an indication there's no strength in that trunk, and then you're going to have to stake them. Most people know that pruning is a way to keep their trees healthy and properly shaped. But many people don't know that that black stuff or sticky goo that you see used on tree cuts isn't actually good. Here's why. Natural healing is what you want, a proper clean cut with a little bit of a stub away from the branch it's emanating from, and that can heal beautifully just out in the open air with natural air circulation. But if you use different kinds of compounds that are available, usually over time they'll crack and they'll actually prevent that type of proper healing, and then in those cracks and breaks you get places for pests and disease to start. Almost universally, and you notice I'm saying almost, we want to stay away from tree pruning compounds of all kinds. There is an exception, fairly rare, but when pruning oaks and or elms during the growing season, then you would want to use a latex-based paint specifically for that purpose right over the cuts, and that is a way of preventing beetles from spreading disease of things like oak wilt and Dutch elm disease. Now I want to focus a little bit more on landscape design, because many people ask about it in the comments every week, and I enjoy the discussion of it. The most common mistake I see in those questions is flipping the design process on its head. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of people, even me, want to pick plants first, and I have to admit, I know a lot of times a plant I'm going to definitely use even before I've done the proper planting. But the proper way to do plant selection is in response to a lot of things that come before it. So analyzing of the site and listing of opportunities and constraints, understanding what your own desires are, what your own goals are, how you're going to maintain the landscape, what look you're after, and that's going to lead us towards the proper plants for this landscape. Do you ever watch those movies that picture the perfect American neighborhood? Manicured hedges, deep green lawns, lacy trees, colorful flowers. You don't need to have any of that to have a pretty landscape. Let me prove it to you. So you don't need a lawn for a landscape to be beautiful. I don't know if that's obvious. A lot of people think, I have a front yard, I have to have a front lawn, and I'm just gonna walk through it to get to the front door. We like to think about how we're going to use it, how we're going to maintain it, issues of water use, and issues of maintenance. The lawn should be an important part of your landscape if you're going to run on it or play on it, or your pets, your kids. Lots of reasons why a lawn is important in terms of use, but beyond that, it isn't necessary to be attractive. And to build further on this note, many people think their front garden is just there for visual appeal. But the best gardeners do something a little different when it comes to designing their front landscape. Instead, let's think of plants or courtyards or different functions for the landscape, perhaps growing edible food. You can go through a whole list of ways to make that front yard important. So one way is to try to maximize the use of it. And you can maximize the use of it with minimizing the setback from the street. Sometimes you have a choice of how close your house would be to the street, or how close some type of fence would be to the street. And we're sitting in a courtyard here that's a front yard courtyard. A traditional way would be to have this be part of the front yard, but it's actually part of our usable yard, backyard, side yards that go all around the house, and then we separated all of these usable spaces from the street. There's ways to be creative and lots of ways to expand the use of the front garden. If you want to know what I would do if I had to start over and learn about landscaping, picking the right plants, and what to avoid at all times, click right here and I will explain it in detail.